every 6 Americans, and my family is struggling with hunger. Like you, we believe in this country. What's hard to believe is in the land of milk and honey, how many hardworking Americans have to choose between paying bills and feeding their families. This is a problem with a solution. Please visit feedingamerica.org today and find your local food bank for ways to help. Every dollar you donate helps provide 7 meals for those around you quietly struggling with hunger. Together, we're Feeding America.
Brought to you by Feeding America and the Ad Council.
My name is Joe Thompson. I'm 29 years old and have a career that I love as a systems analyst. Career. It still sounds cool to say that word. I never could have gotten on this path without a college degree. And if the college me were here, he'd tell you.
I never would have gotten to college without Big Brothers Big Sisters. I could have ended up anywhere, on the streets even. But college? Joe Thompson? Not likely. My big brother helped me out. He taught me I could do anything, at a time when a lot of people were saying just the opposite.
And to a 7-year-old, that means a lot. My big brother's name is Phil, and Phil is the reason that this 7-year-old grows up to be a systems analyst.
Whether you donate money or time, you're helping Big Brothers Big Sisters help a child, and that can last a lifetime. Start something today at bigbrothersbigsisters.org. Brought to you by Big Brothers Big Sisters and the Ad Council.
Need to get some rest. This is the worst headache ever.
Right arm's all tingly all of a sudden. Must have slept on it last night.
I keep losing my balance. These old bones need some exercise.
Granddaddy, what you just said doesn't even make sense. It sounds like gibberish.
Signs like these could be more than what they seem. They could be a sign of stroke.
Sudden weakness or numbness of the face, arm, or leg.
Sudden trouble with vision in one or both eyes.
Sudden trouble walking or difficulty with balance.
Or a sudden intense headache that comes out of nowhere.
If you or someone you know has any of these symptoms, don't wait. Call 911 immediately. You could make a difference in someone's life, someone you love, maybe even your own.
Time lost is brain lost.
Find out more at powertoendstroke.org. Brought to you by the American Heart Association, American Stroke Association, and the Ad Council.
If an individual student athlete or team wins a high school state championship, it's an amazing thing. And it goes in! It's also just the icing on the cake. That's because young people in Florida who participate in education-based athletics are already winners. Studies show that win or lose, participation helps to impart skills they can use to enjoy greater success in other areas of their lives. School sports teach the benefits of teamwork, the value of self-motivation, and the importance of accountability. They also help to foster stronger work habits and higher levels of self-esteem. In other words, the true value of school sports can't be measured in terms of wins or losses. If an individual or team goes to state, it's an incredible accomplishment. But regardless of the outcome, today's student athletes are already destined to go far. School sports, a winning part of a complete education. This message presented by the Florida High School Athletic Association and the Florida Interscholastic Athletic Administrators Association.
Talk 1470 is WWNN Pompano Beach and 95.3 FM W237BD Boca Raton. The Health and Wealth Radio Network, 1470 AM and 95.3 FM. The Health and Wealth Radio Network. Listen for the latest on nutritional facts on Food for Thought with your host, Jolie Root, Mondays at noon, WNN.
You can become independently healthy, and I'll tell you how. Dr. Bob Martin here. If you want to feel, function, and perform the very best you can, please tune in and call into my show Sunday mornings at 10 on Talk 1470 WNN.
People are learning in a classroom how money is made from home at Online Trading Academy. Just how much?
$100, $200, $300. They were able to get to $500 a day in a little over 8 months. $500 a day, folks, is $10,000 a month.
Get classroom instruction on how money can be made from home and how risk is limited. Learn stocks, options, futures, forex. Learn step-by-step from professional traders at Online Trading Academy.
Everyone starts off very small baby steps. You know, if you can't average $100 a day, There's no way you're going to be able to make $300 a day or $3,000 a day in the markets.
Thousands have learned how money can be made from home with limited risk at Online Trading Academy. Attend a free half-day class to see how it works in Broward and Palm Beach. Online Trading Academy. Call now. 561-674-9800. 561-674-9800. That's 561-674-9800.
Now you can get Talk 1470 WNN on 95.3 FM too. Loud and clear. Health and Wealth Radio, WNN.
The opinions expressed on the following sponsored program are strictly those of the host, guests, and callers, and not necessarily those of this station, its staff, management, or sponsors. Are you a family caregiver? Are you caregiving for someone who can no longer take care of themselves? Are you overwhelmed? This is Caregiver Solutions Info with Marcia Teal. Marcia will be hosting an hour of true stories and information, tips and updates of the latest research and necessary information in the caregiving field, focusing on you, the family caregiver. An Alzheimer's disease and dementia care expert, Marcia has 15 years of hands-on experience at Arden Courts, a leader in assisted living dementia communities here in the U.S. Marcia covers everything you need to know as a family caregiver, especially if you care for a loved one with Alzheimer's disease or other related dementia or chronic illness. If you have a friend or relative that is also a family caregiver, call them now. They won't want to miss a minute. And let them know they can watch on CareGiverSolutions.info. And they can listen on WNN 1470 AM in South Florida or nationally on the iHeartRadio app. Now, sit back, relax, and learn from our host, Marcia Teal, as she brings information to you that may just be the caregiving solution you need.
Hi, everyone, and welcome to Caregiver Solutions Info Show. I'm so glad that you could be with us today. I'm back in Boca Raton, Florida, and we are live. You can watch us on the website, caregiversolutions.info, or if you live in South Florida, you can catch us on 1470 AM and 95.3 FM. However you are joining us, I am glad that you did. We have a wonderful show for you. This show actually stresses caregiving and caregiving solutions. So if you're a caregiver and you're helping someone and caring for someone who cannot care for themselves, especially someone that has dementia, doesn't matter what kind of dementia or what it's caused by. It could be Alzheimer's, it could be vascular dementia, it could be a number of other types of dementia. This show was meant for you. It's very difficult being a caregiver, and if you are one, you already know that, but it's hard to learn everything all at once, and you don't really go to school for it, so by the time someone becomes a caregiver, they're just thrust into the position, and it's almost like learn as you go. But we try to give you information on this show that's going to help you. There's going to be professionals that deal with all kinds of subjects that caregivers need to know about. We have elder law attorneys, we have social workers, geriatric care managers, doctors, a number of different professionals. And in addition to professionals, we actually have caregivers on the show too, because you can learn from them. They're walking your path and you're walking theirs. And no better way to learn from someone that's in your shoes. So the show is designed for people that want to learn more at their convenience. You can watch us live or you can go on to the website and catch some previous shows. So as a caregiver, you know, you take care of someone, and it's a very difficult, overwhelming job when someone has dementia. But what if a person that has dementia also has some other disabilities along with that memory loss? Things like a physical disability, not being able to walk so well. Maybe they're in a wheelchair or on a walker. What if they have major hearing loss or they're deaf? Or what if they have vision problems? Because all of these additional disabilities are going to affect and change the way that you care for someone with dementia. A lot of people don't realize, but when you have Alzheimer's, for instance, things change in the brain. And things are always changing because the Alzheimer's disease is killing off the brain cells, and different parts of the brain tell the body what to do and how to do it. So if part of the brain is being affected that causes people to, see or to walk or to swallow, then those things are going to be more difficult. So a lot of people that experience peripheral vision problems, depth perception problems, those are things that come along with sometimes having the disease. Sometimes they don't. But as people age, and we're all aging all the time, and we're aging along with having Alzheimer's disease, we're also aging our body and our brain. And so our brain is being affected, but so are perhaps our eyes, or our ability to do some physical things, or our ability to see things in the right way, or see things at all. So this show is going to highlight how to know better to care for someone that has a disability. We're also going to be talking about the American Disabilities Act, and my guest today is a big advocate for the American Disabilities Act, the ADA. And he's going to talk to you today about what you need to know and what your rights are under this act. So it's my pleasure to introduce to you now Robert Goodman. Hi, Robert.
Hi, thank you.
Thanks for coming.
Thank you for having me.
Well, I want to let everybody know Robert has a master's in social work, and he is a geriatric social worker for many, many years. And I've known him for many, many years. And he's a wonderful person, tries to help a lot of people, and he does a lot of things. He wears a lot of different hats. So I'm so glad to have you here today, Robert, to talk about ADA, American Disabilities Act. First of all, I mentioned that you were such a big advocate for it. Why are you a big advocate for it?
Well, having multiple disabilities myself, I've always felt very impassioned that we have to have our rights met, and also that we have to have certain services. And way back in New York, when I was active in the disabled advocacy group, Disabled in Action, we were advocating for transportation rights. We were advocating for a lot of laws, and also these laws should be enforced. I mean, the Rehabilitation Act of 1973 was passed after a lot of protests around the country, a lot of advocacy work around the country. At Florida State University, where I went to school, we made the campus accessible before the Rehab Act of 73 was even law. In those days, Florida was a very progressive state. And now you have the ADA, the Americans with Disabilities Act. We need to start enforcing it. And the ADA has been very good for people who have lost jobs because of disability, but it has not been that good for people with visual disabilities.
Okay. So you mentioned you yourself have disability. Do you mind sharing with us what that is?
Sure. I'm legally blind, and I have ataxia cerebral palsy.
Okay. So you have a physical disability with the cerebral palsy, and then your vision is, would you say, highly impaired, moderately impaired?
I'd say moderately to high impaired.
Moderately to high, okay. And so you have obviously these disabilities, and you have found out as you're out and about that, like you said, maybe the act isn't addressing some of the things that it's supposed to address. So let's go back for a second and talk about the ADA. When was this act initiated and why?
In 1990, President George Herbert Walker Bush signed the Americans with Disabilities Act into law after, like I said, again, a lot of nationwide advocacy efforts. But even before that, you have the Rehabilitation Act of 1973, and that law affects any government agency and anybody receiving government funds, whether it's Medicare or Medicaid. So that's been law for a long time. And then in 1990, the ADA was passed, and that impacts on state and local government. And All businesses. Of
All
any kind.
businesses.
Any kind of business that provides service to the general public.
So you're talking like grocery stores, movie theaters,
Right.
things like that?
Any public accommodation. A public accommodation is defined as any kind of like a restaurant, as you said, a movie, healthcare agencies, and a lot of what I do is involved in healthcare. It involves any, like if you go to CVS, it involves that. It includes that too. If I need to go into a store, and I need to get assistance in the store, they're required by law to provide that assistance by helping me find whatever I'm looking for.
Okay. And, in your travels out and about, have you ever encountered a very difficult time in locating something where maybe you didn't get the help that you needed?
Sure, you go into a drugstore or a department store, and the first thing I do is point over there. And that doesn't help me any. And I have to say, well, excuse me, I can't see that well. I need you to show me. Well, it's over there, and they repeat themselves until you finally kind of knock them over the head a little bit and say, listen, lady or man, I can't see. You got to help walk with me to the location of where I'm looking for.
Right. Or they might say it's aisle 5, but maybe aisle 5 isn't marked very well, or it's too far away for someone with vision.
Right. Is it left side or right side of the aisle? Is it, top or bottom? I mean, I had to get something in the drugstore the other day, and she gave me good directions as to what aisle it was on. But apparently it was on the very bottom, and I couldn't find it. I had to go back and get help. But,
Must take, it's a difficult thing for people with perfect vision to find things in a drugstore. I've had that experience where I know what I'm looking for. I know where it's supposed to be, but there's so many choices and so many different shelves, and everything's kind of all...
And they move stuff.
And they move stuff on you. Yeah, they do. They move
Especially
stuff.
Publix.
So it's very difficult, for even someone like me who doesn't have any vision loss. I wear contacts, but, I can see pretty well. But for someone that is really having vision problems, I can see where that would be a very difficult situation.
In healthcare, it's particularly a problem. When you go to a doctor's office and, they say, here, fill out these forms. Well, I can't see these forms. I can't read them. And some of them I can read, but I can't fill them out because the space is so small between the lines. They're required by law to provide a person to assist you in filling out that paperwork. If my wife's with me, sure, she can do it, but by law, they can't ask her to do it. You cannot ask another person. And same thing.
Whether it's related or non-related.
Right. If it's for a person who has a hearing loss, for a deaf person, you cannot ask a child or a relative to interpret for you in a hospital setting, let's say. That hospital has to provide an interpreter because, first of all, you're getting into a lot of personal stuff, and secondly, there's a lot of technical stuff that the family person might not be able to interpret properly. So, the AD and the deaf community has been very good at getting interpreters in hospitals and getting their rights met.
Yeah, and I have a story about that too, about getting an interpreter. So hang on to that thought. We're going to take our first break. When we come back, Robert's going to tell us more about the American Disability Act and what you should know. Stay with us.
Arden Courts is not just a place to live, it's a place to call home. Residential living combined with quality caregiving. This is the philosophy behind Arden Courts. Communities created exclusively for individuals with Alzheimer's disease and related dementia who would benefit from a safe and structured environment. For additional information about any of the unique services Arden Courts provides, call 888-478-2410 to locate a community nearest you. Inquire about our educational seminars, resource library, or support groups, or simply feel free to ask questions you may have about Alzheimer's and related dementias. At Arden Courts, we know, we understand, and we can help because memory care is all we do. Remember, call 888-478-2410 for additional information about any of the unique services Arden Courts provides.
Being unable to recognize the obvious often occurs with Alzheimer's or related dementias, even among their caregivers. When the time comes for you to decide that someone you love needs more help than you can give, will you be able to recognize it? Don't wait for a crisis to make the decision for you. Talk to Arden Courts. Memory care is all we do. We know. We understand. We can help. To learn more, visit arden-courts.com. Arden Courts follows equal housing opportunity guidelines. Somewhere at the corner of bewildered
CareGiverSolutions.info. If you have a question or wish to share a story, call into the show at 888-565-1470 and talk with Marcia. Now, back to Caregiver Solutions.
Hi, and welcome back. My name is Marcia Teal, the host of Caregiver Solutions, and my guest today is Robert Goodman. Robert has a master's in social work, and he's a geriatric social worker for many years. And today we're talking about the American Disability Act, what you should know as a caregiver to help take care of your loved one that has disability, not just Alzheimer's type of dementia, but a lot of other disabilities that they can have together with that, such as loss of hearing, loss of sight, physical disability. So, Robert, we're talking about, all of this, but let's talk about the definition of disability, because I know that this American Disability Act that was, started in 1990 covers a lot of different disabilities, hearing and vision and a lot of other things, there's a list of them, but you have to qualify, right, to be considered to fall under that.
Correct.
How does that definition work, or what does it actually mean?
Well, I'm going to read the actual definition. An individual disability is defined as an individual with who has a physical or mental impairment that substantially limits one or more life activities, or has a record of such a disability, meaning they're registered with a state agency or a rehab facility, or is regarded as having such an impairment. So if someone considers me to have a disability, even though I may not admit it myself, that's also under the definition. Major life activities include functions such as caring for oneself, performing manual tasks like walking, seeing, hearing, speaking, breathing, learning, and working.
Okay, so under that definition of disability, you have to have some impact on your life that says that you can't do your normal activities of daily living because of the disability. And it can affect different areas of your life, like you mentioned.
That's correct.
Yeah. So, this is important because that affects, could affect everybody, that's listening here in one way or another, either from themselves or by having someone that they're caring for. So why is it important for caregivers who might be healthy, why is it important for them to know about the American Disability Act?
They need to know what the rights of the people that they're caring for are. So, when you take your caregivee into a doctor's office, and they say, well, we have nobody to fill out the paperwork. Well, they're required to help you fill out the paperwork. If you go into a nursing home setting, a hospital setting, and you're being discharged, the caregiver might have a visual disability themselves. So they have a right to ask for the discharge plan to be printed in large print. And so it's not just the person who has a disability, the caregivee. It could also be a relative who's caring for them who has a disability, and they need the information for themselves.
Right, because if they have a harder time caring for someone because of a disability they may have, they have certain rights that maybe they're not aware of that could help them ultimately care better, not only for themselves, but for the person they care for, too.
You have a right to a large print menu when you go into a restaurant. There are many restaurants that do have that. Many don't. Or the other option, by the way, to large print or braille or tape, is for a person to read it to you. So when you're getting, let's say, home health care, for example, and, they give you a document, this thick, and, if that person wants to sit there and take a whole day reading all that to you, that's their option. But it sure is a lot easier to have it in large print or braille or some other format for you.
So it's it's legally your right as a disabled, quote unquote, disabled person by the definition, legally your right to ask for instance, larger print
yes,
at a
absolutely.
restaurant?
That's
or a
absolutely-
doctor's office?
Or have someone read it to you.
And what if the doctor's office says, we don't have this in large print and we don't have time to have someone come over and read this to you? What do you do?
I give them a little card I made up, which is for a person with a disability, visual disability, that says, these are my rights and you're required by law. You know, you push hard enough and they'll find somebody to help you.
You scared me there for a second. When you said you'd give them a little card, I thought you were going to give them your attorney's card.
No, it's a
and you
5x8 card that I made up for people with visual disabilities to hand to a healthcare provider when they're getting services.
And it says on there that because I'm disabled, you are required by law to help me with what I need.
Right. A person with a disability has certain rights under the ADA, under the Rehabilitation Act of 73 as well. You know, if they're going into a healthcare facility, they're using any kind of healthcare service that are Medicare or Medicaid, they're covered by both laws.
Well, let me ask you this. You know, there was a lot of younger people that work in doctors' offices at the front desk and in the office and filers and things like that. And I mean, these days, let's face it, a lot of the doctors are very young too.
Yes.
The older I get, the younger they are, right? So are they all aware of the ADA? Do they get trained in it? Do they know about it? Or is it no?
Which is what I am trying to do with, I have a website and I've tried to educate the community, the healthcare community, about what the rights are of people with disabilities. And I've worked with home health agencies and healthcare facilities in trying to train people about. I'm trying to help people prevent lawsuits, and that's really the bottom line here. Is what I'm trying to do in teaching healthcare providers about the ADA is to help them prevent lawsuits. And
because ultimately it could come to that, couldn't it?
There are a lot of lawyers that are going around trying to find, they're going to a restaurant and, they'll go to 10 restaurants and 10 restaurants don't have large print. They'll sue all 10.
They will? I mean,
they're
out looking for?
They're out looking for that.
Wow.
And that's really wrong. So I'm trying to help people prevent themselves from being sued and also from getting tagged by ACA, by Agency for Healthcare Administration. When they come in and they do checks to see
that's the governing body for the ADA?
That's the governing body for healthcare providers, nursing homes, ALFs.
Okay. So this is the problem, I guess, that you're talking about is the law, the act is made into law. It's out there. A, not many people know about it, and B, even more don't comply with it. And that seems to be the situation.
There's been a lot of compliance when it comes to putting ramps in buildings, to putting accessible bathrooms into accessible water fountains and so forth.
Yeah, I see that a lot. You go into restaurants and you see the ramps, you see the handrails in the bathrooms and handicapped equipped, but doesn't it need to go further than that?
But when it comes to vision disabilities, very few people know what our rights are when we come into your business.
Wow.
And it's important for caregivers to understand what their rights are as they age or may acquire a disability, also what the rights of the people they care for. So you need to know, what to do. And what you do is, if there's a violation of your rights, is contact the U.S. Department of Justice. And I have that information I'll give you later.
Okay, we'll make sure we give that out to everybody. I mean, that would that be a last resort after you've attempted many times to rectify the situation?
The most important thing is, and you just said it, the most important thing is it's your responsibility as a person with a disability or as a caregiver of someone with a disability to assert what your rights are. Let people know what your needs are. That's your responsibility. And once those needs are not met, and you've gone through the channel, you've gone up to the management if necessary, then you can, the last resort is to sue, I guess. And I'm not a big fan of suing people.
Yeah. Well, but you have to make sure that you can get what you need with your disability, because otherwise you could make a serious mistake, right? I mean, if you're trying to fill something out and you have vision impairment and you can't really see too well what it's asking, or the little boxes that you're supposed to check off are so tiny that maybe you check the wrong one, it could cause some major problems.
Or if you go to a store and you want to buy something, there are two containers that look alike. And this happened to a friend of mine. Instead of using oil, she picked up antifreeze.
No.
Yes. Yeah, that was a long time ago. But
Oh, wow.
look, it was her husband's fault, actually.
Wow.
He put something in the wrong place.
Yeah, well, see, there's a
But
lot
that
of...
can happen in a store when you go into a store.
Mm-hmm.
You know.
Mm-hmm. And things sometimes look similar.
That's what I'm saying.
Or even if it's a over-the-counter medication that you're looking for, there sometimes are very subtle differences. I know I sent my husband to go buy a certain kind of vitamin, right? And I told him this is the name, right? This is kind of the label, what it looks like. He's not impaired, at least not, vision-wise.
Watch it. It's live.
Yeah, he's probably watching the show. But, he went in, he grabbed what he saw, what he thought, and he came home, and this was just like a month or so ago. And he brought me home prenatal vitamins. And I said to him, seriously, honey, is there something you know that I don't know? And he says, what do you mean? And I said, these are prenatal. He says, but it's what you said. It's the name. I says, yes, but did you see right underneath it said prenatal, and I said, and I don't think we're having a baby at this stage of our life.
Sarah in the Bible had a baby at age 90, so there's always hope.
Yeah, well, I think I'm done with that. But I know exactly what you mean, and it can happen to anybody, but someone who has a disability, it's going to happen more than it should.
And by the way, pharmacies are required to provide you with large print labels, and I believe Walgreens and CVS will both do that. They also will provide you with a large print printout of explaining what the medications are. They also, I believe, CVS, I think, has a program where they have a machine that can help you identify your pills. You can buy in the store. Offhand, I don't remember the name of the product, but...
All right. I know there's a lot of equipment and tools and aids, that help people that are visually impaired, that come through, like, for instance, here, Lighthouse for the Blind is one of the resources, and we can talk more about that. But it's so important, and when they give those little bottles of pills from the pharmacy, sometimes they're little bottles, and so will all that big print fit on a little bottle?
What they'll do is they'll put a little larger print on the bottle, but then they'll give you
the paper that goes with
it. I mean, I had a pharmacist once give me supposed to give me 10 milligrams or something, and there were 2 pills in the bottle. So I thought, I guess each one is 10 milligrams. Each one was 5 milligrams. I thought it was supposed to be 5 milligrams. I'm sorry. And I said, okay, I'll take both pills. Well, it was 10 milligrams each.
Wow.
I slept the entire day.
Oh, you actually took them?
I took them.
Wow. See, right there. That's dangerous. I mean...
And I told my pharmacist, the next day I went to my pharmacist and gave her the Riot Act. I said, I can't see well, and yet you didn't tell me what the label said.
Right. And they should, I know when you go to the pharmacy, they give you your order, and they'll say, do you have any questions? Well, you don't know what question to ask unless you know what the deal is, what they've provided for you. So I think it's important for pharmacists to follow through and follow up, and not just try to, give you the pills and get the next person in line without understanding that they know you understand what you have.
Lighthouse for the Blind they don't sell it, but they can help you get a product that will help you identify your pills in various ways. There are various kinds of products out there.
Mm-hmm.
So if someone has a visual disability, their best bet is to contact Lighthouse for the Blind.
Okay, and that's here in South Florida, and you can just Google it.
There's one, each county has
their own.
Broward has one, Miami has one, and the one for Palm Beach is for the whole Treasure Coast and Palm Beach.
Okay, and if you're not in South Florida, just Google, wherever you are in your area for help with
you can go to the American Foundation for the Blind website, afb.org. It has a directory, state-by-state directory of services.
Wonderful.
For people with visual disabilities.
Oh, wonderful. That's great information. So we're going to take a next commercial break. We'll be right back with more.
Being unable to recognize the obvious often occurs with Alzheimer's or related dementias, even among their caregivers. When the time comes for you to decide that someone you love needs more help than you can give, will you be able to recognize it? Don't wait for a crisis to make the decision for you. Talk to Arden Courts. Memory care is all we do. We know, we understand, we can help. To learn more, visit arden-courts.com. Arden Courts follows equal housing opportunity guidelines. Somewhere at the corner of bewildered and confused is a lost mother, a father, a sibling, a grandparent. Wandering is a common symptom of Alzheimer's or related dementias and can often make those who care for a loved one feel just as lost. If you're looking for a place that's safe and secure, look to Arden Courts. Memory care is all we do. We know, we understand, we can help. To learn more, visit arden-courts.com. Arden Courts follows equal housing opportunity guidelines. Feelings of depression, isolation, and frustration are common among persons living with Alzheimer's or related dementias. It's common among those who care for them, too. It takes a lot of
CareGiverSolutions.info. If you have a question or wish to share a story, call into the show at 888-565-1470 and talk with Marcia. Now, back to Caregiver Solutions.
We are back, and at this time, I'd like to thank our national sponsor, Arden Courts Memory Care Community. Arden Courts has about 50 communities all across the United States. They have 10 right here in South Florida, and they are dedicated 100% to memory care. So if you live near Arden Courts, you can get a lot of resources. They do, of course, long-term care, but they also do respite services. They have support groups. They have resources, a resource library that you can go in and look at to see whatever kind of information that you need to help you as a caregiver. One of the things that Arden Courts would like to do for you today, just for watching the Caregiver Solutions info show, is to provide you with a free copy of this book. It's called The 36-Hour Day. This is a wonderful resource for caregivers. It's written by Nancy Mace and Dr. Peter Rabins, and this book is a great tool for caregivers. It has a lot of definitions, it has a lot of examples, and it has a lot of good info and advice. So if you don't have this book and you'd like to have it, all you have to do is call Arden Courts on their toll-free number. That number is 888-478-2410. Again, 888-478-2410. Call them up, tell them that you heard about the offer on the Caregiver Solutions show, and they will get your name and your address and make sure they mail a book right out to you. So my guest today is Robert Goodman, and he is a geriatric social worker. He has a master's in social work, worked in both New York and down here in Florida. And we're talking today about the American Disability Act. And Robert, you are full of wonderful resource information. This is such an interesting topic. I think it's so important, to get the word out there for everybody, but especially for caregivers. Their job is so difficult anyway. A lot of caregivers have their own disability caring for someone, and even if they don't, the person they're caring for may have dementia, but have a disability on top of that. So we talked about hearing loss. We've talked about vision loss. We've talked about, a physical disability. Lots more to talk about. But there's something called disability etiquette. So you told me to mention that because you wanted to speak to that, and tell me what it is and let me know and let us know, what we should do.
Well, the first thing to know is you want to use the word person first language, the person with the disability. And the reason you do that is to give that person dignity. You're emphasizing the person, not the disability. So it's a person with a visual disability. It's a person with a visual impairment, a person with cerebral palsy.
So it would be, if I was talking about a friend of mine, I would say my friend Mary, who has
whatever,
who's blind, right? And she has a disability. I don't say my friend Mary is disabled. Is that what you're talking about?
Yeah, and you don't say my disabled friend Mary. It's my friend Mary who has a disability.
Okay, so but basically what you're saying is we don't want to label somebody
Exactly.
as disabled.
Exactly.
Okay,
And part of disability etiquette also is knowing how to properly assist somebody with a disability. So, for example, if you have if you're walking into a restaurant, if you're walking into any place, the person with a visual disability should hold your arm just above the elbow, and you should not be leading them. You should be leading them, not them leading you. In other words, they should be behind you.
They should be behind you?
Behind you and holding on to the just above your elbow.
So the person with the disabilities, I said it right that time.
Correct.
The person with the disability should be following the caregiver and holding on, for a better lack of a better word, the caregiver's forearm.
Forearm, correct.
And that's how.
That's for a blind person or a person with a visual disability.
Okay, because otherwise, if the person with the vision disability is going first, I mean, that's.
You're going to fall off the curb before you do.
Right. Or they're going to miss the step in the restaurant or something like that. So you got to be very, very careful about that.
The other thing, too, is speak directly to a person with a disability. Very often you'll have a situation where, you have two of us are sitting here and a waitress comes over or a waiter comes over and they'll say, I'm the person with a disability, and they'll say, what would he like to have for dinner?
So they make an assumption that you can't speak for yourself?
Exactly. So you always want to speak directly to a person with a disability and ask them the questions, not go through a third party. Another example is if you have somebody in a wheelchair, you're working with somebody in a wheelchair, you don't lean on the wheelchair unless you get permission, first of all. Secondly, you want to get down to their level. So you should be sitting on a chair, speaking to them, not speaking down to them.
You see that all the time.
I
Someone's
know.
in a wheelchair and the person speaking to them is, standing up, and it almost looks like, well, they are literally talking down to them, but it's a figurative and literal,
Exactly.
situation. So, but what if it's a waiter at a restaurant?
Well, that's different.
And that's different.
That's
so you
different.
wouldn't expect the general public to know to get to eye level.
No, eye level is when you're having a long conversation.
Okay.
Just asking a question or, something, that's different.
So if you're a doctor, for instance, and you're a person with a disability and you're in the doctor's office and the doctor comes in, shouldn't they then sit down on the stool
Yes, they
across from
should.
you if you're in a wheelchair?
But not only that, also, like, for example, I have no peripheral vision. So when I'm sitting in a doctor's office and if they're going to be on my right side, I can't see them. I asked the doctor actually to change the office into a different office where I could see him. So that's another.
Why didn't the doctor just move into the front?
Too short, too small of an office.
Too small of an office?
Yeah, it wasn't.
So you went to a bigger room.
Right, bigger room where he could sit on my left side.
Now, how many people would actually think about doing that? Because I know a lot of people that are intimidated by their doctor. They shouldn't be, but they are.
Doctors are not God.
Well, yeah, but, a lot of people feel that way, and they don't want to upset the doctor. So I see that could be a problem for some people to say, hey, I can't see you. Let's change, let's go to another room. And I applaud you for speaking up.
You have to be assertive, not aggressive, but assertive. There's a difference. You've got to let someone know what your needs are, or they're not going to meet those needs, whether it's your needs or the caregivee's needs.
Mm-hmm.
Another example, if somebody who's hearing impaired, you don't want to shout.
But everybody shouts
You can
when
raise your volume, but don't shout, because shouting distorts what you're saying, distorts your lips. And if a person is reading your lips, they're not going to be able to understand you if you're shouting and making strange, like that sort of thing, Just, they can't understand you.
So when someone has hearing loss,
right,
raise the volume of your voice, but don't yell at them, is what you're saying.
Exactly, and speak directly to them without hopefully get rid of any kind of sources of noise in the room. If it's a noisy room, you might want to move to a place where it's quieter. Make sure there's no obstacles between you and the person who has a hearing impairment.
Yeah, it's important. And we teach caregivers that too with their loved ones that have dementia to speak right to them. Don't talk about them in a room when they're there, right? Include them in the conversation as best as you can. And look at them in the eyes. And it's very important to look somebody in the eyes, whether they have a disability. Oh, I said it wrong, didn't I? I said it wrong.
You said it right. If
I
they
said
have
it
a
right. They have a
disability.
disability. Okay, I'm just watching my etiquette here, my disability etiquette. So, but it's important. Look the person in the eye, right? What if somebody has a walker? I mean, that's considered, not the norm.
You want to walk with the person. And one thing I see that really irritates me is a lot of caregivers are on the cell phone while they're while they're walking with their caregivee. I'm not sure that's the right word, but I'll use that word.
It works.
It works.
Yeah.
So that's really so dangerous. I mean, that person could be, you're paying attention on like distracted driving.
Mm-hmm.
Distracted walking is the same thing.
Mm-hmm. I do. I see that too all the time.
I've told a few people not to get off their cell phones.
Mm-hmm.
If I see a situation where it could be dangerous.
Right, and they probably don't pay attention to you.
Probably not.
Yeah. I mean, all these things are very important, and we need to be more aware, and that's what it's about. It's about awareness, what your rights are, what you need to know. There's a lot of things that we take for granted, too, and you don't know what someoe's going through, whether you mentioned even a mental disability.
Right. That's a whole area. They have an organization called NAMI, which is for families of people with mental illness. They're very good at helping you. All of this stuff has to do with just understanding where a person is, talking to them like a normal person. My daughter was in a psych unit. She's in nursing school, and she had a person with schizophrenia was talking to her, and she was talking about how she was going to be president of the United States, and she had this big business she was doing, and she was all kinds of stuff. Totally made no sense. And my daughter, shook her head. She listened carefully. She, nodded. That's what you have to do,
Well, that's a mental disability, and what you just said is the way we would interact with someone with memory loss too, because they're going to say things. They hallucinate. They get paranoid. They make up stories. They say things, that isn't right, but you don't correct them. No. You kind of listen, like you said, nod, shake your head, let them feel that you're understanding what they're saying. And then what we teach is then, obviously, it's not right, but let them have their say, let them vent or whatever they want to do, and then distract them and get on to something else.
I've also heard that with someone with dementia, with Alzheimer's, you can get into their period, whatever period of life they're in. If they're in their 40s, the 1940s, they're talking about World War II, you can have a normal conversation with them if you're in that period that they're in also.
Yeah, because they remember that, maybe they haven't lost that memory yet, and they have the memories of being in World War II. I talked to a fella that was a Holocaust survivor, and he was a young boy when he ran and hid, and he told me the story, and it was amazing. I mean, in detail. So, you listen and you can learn, but that's where he was at that time, because he was he's in his 80s, but he remembered it from when
That's a rough thing to remember.
That was a rough thing to remember. It really was. So I gave him, time and to express how he felt, and I was empathetic and to him, and that's about all you can do. So this is really, really good stuff, and we have some more resources to give to our audience as soon as we come back, and we'll take another short break, be our last break, and you'll want to stay tuned for all the more to come. So we'll be right back.
Do you need the advice of
Being unable to recognize the obvious often occurs with Alzheimer's or related dementias, even among their caregivers. When the time comes for you to decide that someone you love needs more help than you can give, will you be able to recognize it? Don't wait for a crisis to make the decision for you. Talk to Arden Courts. Memory care is all we do. We know, we understand, we can help. To learn more, visit arden-courts.com. Arden Courts follows equal housing opportunity guidelines. Somewhere at the corner of bewildered and confused is a lost mother, a father, a sibling, a grandparent. Wandering is a common symptom of Alzheimer's or related dementias and can often make those who care for a loved one feel just as lost. If you're looking for a place that's safe and secure, look to Arden Courts. Memory care is all we do. We know, we understand, we can help. To learn more, visit arden-courts.com. Arden Courts follows equal housing opportunity guidelines. Patience and courage. It also takes knowing when you can no longer do it alone. At Arden Courts, memory care is all we do. Talk to us. We know, we understand, we can help. Don't let guilt keep you from making the right decision. Visit arden-courts.com. Arden Courts follows equal housing opportunity guidelines. Wandering is a common problem for people with Alzheimer's or related dementias. It's also a problem for family members who
or wish to share a story, call into the show at 888-565-1470 and talk with Marcia. Now, back to Caregiver Solutions.
Thanks for joining us. This is Caregiver Solutions. My name is Marcia Teal. My guest is Robert Goodman. He has a master's in social work. He is a geriatric social worker, and he's a lot. We're going to talk about all the things that you do in addition to advocating for the American Disability Act and getting the word out there. Robert, if someone had more questions, if they wanted to look some things up, do you have a resource for them?
Sure. It's the U.S. Department of Justice Disability Rights Section, and the phone number is 800-514-0301. That's 800-514-0301, or www.ada.gov. That's www.ada.gov. And let me just mention one thing about the ADA, that it covers other things as well. Title I covers employment against employment discrimination. Title II refers to state and local government, so state and local government also must provide accessible community resources to you. They must provide...
Like the Social Security office, things like that?
Right, but, well, that's federal. But state and local government have to provide parks, have to be accessible. They have to provide accessibility into their buildings. Any service they provide to the public must be also provided in an accessible location, as well as, for anybody with a disability. Title III is public accommodations that we've been discussing, and Title IV is telecommunications. So websites should be accessible as well.
Very, very good. So we're talking about when people have to comply, we're talking about in the instance like with your situation. You have a situation where for many, many years you have been severely vision challenged, and this disability is so hard because, our eyes are so important, but there's ways that we can all help, right? And if we see something that we feel that should be changed, we can help you advocate for that, couldn't we? We can write to our...
Write to elected officials.
And let
them know how you feel. By the way, personally, I don't like the word challenged.
Okay.
I feel that everybody in the world has challenges.
That's right.
But I have a disability.
Okay.
And in my view, there's a difference.
So that goes back to disability etiquette.
Yes.
Not challenging etiquette.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, okay.
And
Thank you for letting me know.
People use that word all the time. They have challenge, mentally challenged. Mentally challenged, is it mental retardation or is it mentally ill? I mean, you don't know what it is.
But it is a disability.
It is a disability, of course.
So using the word disability is preferred over the word challenged.
Right.
Okay. I thank you.
Or the word handicapped either.
Or the word handicapped. Now that's the old way,
See,
right?
The way you look at it is, I have a disability, but if I'm in a wheelchair, okay, I have a disability. I want to get into a building with steps Well, those steps have handicapped me. They make it a handicap because I can't get into that building. Very funny story. My friend and I were traveling across country, and we were in Texas. And we went, the Texas State Fair had a beautiful building they built with a beautiful ramp coming from both sides. So we walked up the ramp. We get to the top of the ramp. There's a step.
One step?
So I went inside. I said, how is someone with a wheelchair supposed to get into the building? Oh, we have a beautiful ramp outside. Well, there's a step there. How about that person has electric wheelchair? They can't get into the building. So when you have to really, you need people with disabilities to help plan anything that involves accessibility, in my view.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, who would think, one step would be, a challenge or would be a problem for a person. But in your case, like electric wheelchair, those things are heavy.
But who spends $1 million on a ramp and then puts a step on top of the ramp?
Yeah,
I mean,
true. It
ridiculous.
doesn't make any sense, does it?
It's Texas.
Wow. Those are some really amazing stories that you tell because people just don't realize. But let's talk about, for the few minutes we have left, some of the other hats that you wear. Not only are you a great advocate for the American Disability Act and spreading the word and trying to educate people, but you also volunteer. I know you're a volunteer at Temple Beth Shalom here in Boca Raton. You organize biannual health fairs, and you also publish for many, many years a piece that's called the Florida Navigator Resource Guide. Tell me about what the Navigator Resource Guide is. I know, but tell our audience and tell everybody what's in it and how it can help.
The Florida Navigator is a publication that lists community resources. It tells you how to get government benefits. It's currently, we print it for health fairs right now, and I have an excellent graphic designer who puts it together. And we have we're trying to get it online. A lot of resources are online, and we have a website, which is DisabilityDisabledAmericansAct.com. And it's a resource for the community to use to find what they need, how to apply for services.
So it has, I've seen it for many years, and it's a great resource and it's a great tool. But you kind of combine and concentrate all of these websites, telephone numbers, addresses into a nice, concise guide for people so that they don't have to go and look it all up.
Right.
Yeah.
And we have some of it online, but it's really, right now I'm concentrating on publishing it when I do health fairs for communities. And I'm available to do resource guides for any communities and teach how to write a resource guide as well.
So you do these biannual health fairs. I've been to those, and they really attract a lot of people that come in. The one that you do at Temple Beth Shalom, that's just for the Century Village residents there in that community.
Yes.
So are you open to helping other communities that might be interested in,
of course,
in getting this information?
Of course.
All right. And if someone's listening and you live in a community and you think having this, the Navigator Resource Guide is good and maybe help on putting on some type of educational program, and you want to call Robert and ask him about it and set it up, how could they contact you?
They can contact me through by email. It's rgoodlobby@gmail.com. That's rgoodlobby@gmail.com.
Okay, and that's the best way to contact you?
Yes.
Okay, so feel free, because Robert has a lot of experience, and he's very passionate about helping people and getting word out, and the Navigator Resource Guide is a great tool. And if you want to get in on that, give him a little note by email, and he'll make it happen, right?
Yes.
All right. So any last words about what we could do as individuals to help spread this ADA awareness?
Let people know when you go into any kind of a healthcare facility, any kind of a business, teach them about the ADA and what your rights are, and the rights of your person you're caring for, without being aggressive or anything. Just let them know there is a law that, it's important to understand what your rights are. And it makes it a lot easier for me to get, if I go being discharged from a hospital and they give me a discharge plan I can't read, how can I comply with that discharge plan?
You probably can't, and then you'll end up back in the hospital.
And then the hospital gets fined $1 million by Medicare for rehospitalization within 30 days.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, very important. Real quick story. There was a fellow who was deaf and mute, and his father had Alzheimer's, and they lived together at an Arden Courts, and the father was actually dying, and the nurse needed to tell him. So I knew enough about sign language that I told him, but he signed back to me this, which means I need a priest, because obviously they were Catholic, and I am in no way good enough to, give last rites or sign last rites. So I called the attorney who was the guardian for this family, and he gave me a hard time. I said, we need a priest here. Well, I'm going to get the priest, but we need an interpreter here to interpret. And so he finally did, because I think he realized that, how important it was, and that was the right.
That's his right.
Yeah, that was his right.
There are interpreter services available to various businesses who need it.
Yes. So don't forget, if you find yourself in a situation and you're not getting what you need, speak up, right? Speak up. Be polite.
Go up the chain of command.
Go up the chain of command and get your rights, whatever you need, so that you can be a better caregiver and care for yourself, and not only for the person that you're caring for. Robert, I want to thank you so much for coming today.
Thank you for having me.
It was a great conversation, and I'm sure it helped a lot of people. So thank you again. And thank you for joining in. I'm glad that you're here. I will see you next week, same time, same place. In the meantime, don't forget, give somebody a hug, because they need it, and so do you. We'll see you next time. Take care.
Thanks for joining us for this week's Caregiver Solutions with Marcia Teal. Join us next week as Marcia, who has 15 years of Alzheimer's disease and dementia care experience, brings you more needed information to help with the care of your loved one. This show can be seen again on CareGiverSolutions.info, and questions can be left on the site, which may be used on the program to help others. See you next week for more Caregiver Solutions.
The opinions expressed on the preceding sponsored program were strictly those of its hosts, guests, and callers, and